Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Canadian Prairie. I'm Andrew Pritchard, Senior Meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as we look at temperatures across the region here on this Wednesday morning, June 17th, we can basically draw in the surface features of our storm system here. We've got the warm front draped across this area. We've got our area of low pressure kind of along the Saskatchewan and Manitoba border. And then we've got a cold front extending south from there down into the northern plains of the United States with cooler air coming in on the back side there. As we look off to the north, we've got some downright cold air in the lower single digits off to the north. And while it may not get that cold, we're going to see that colder air mass being kind of pulled back into the eastern Corn Belt, or the eastern Canadian Prairie, as we head into the next couple of days, really cooling things down from where they are right now. Look at that, 25 already here mid-morning in Winnipeg. Let's take a look at the satellite picture. We saw clusters of thunderstorms flaring up across especially southern Manitoba during the overnight, and we can kind of see things clearing out now. This is setting the stage for another round of strong storms during the late afternoon and evening hours, especially over southeastern Manitoba, down into the northern plains of the United States, far northern North Dakota and northwest Minnesota going to be under the gun as well. So seeing these clearing skies, this is allowing things to heat up and destabilize, again, along and south of that warm front, out and ahead of the cold front, back off to the west. As we look at the radar picture this morning, again, quiet across the area that we'll be watching for the most robust thunderstorm threat later in the day. But we've got plenty of rain shower activity on the backside here, on the backside of that storm system, kind of a cool and rainy day across portions of the western and central prairies. So what happened yesterday across southeastern Saskatchewan? I was talking about a bullseye with a severe weather threat across this region, and we saw thunderstorms flaring up kind of everywhere but that region. As we take a look at the radar from yesterday afternoon into the evening, we see those thunderstorms producing some hail across the Saskatoon area, across central portions of Saskatchewan, and then we saw thunderstorms kind of erupting in this area during the late afternoon into the overnight. But across southeastern Saskatchewan, where the ingredients were really coming together for several strong thunderstorms, producing maybe a couple of tornadoes, we had what's known as a cap. We saw kind of the moisture arriving too late, so that we did have the instability, the wind shear in place there. We have a layer of warm air, though, just above the surface, and so as that air tries to rise and develop into those big puffy cumulus clouds, it's kind of instead cut off there by that cap. Meanwhile, across central portions of Saskatchewan and over across southern Manitoba, with no cap in place, the air was free to rise freely, and so that's why we saw those thunderstorms in that area, and we just ended up remaining capped there across southeastern Saskatchewan. I know there were a couple storm chasers out there looking for supercells and tornadoes, and it was just what we call in storm chasing a blue sky bust, and that will just happen sometimes. But as we head through the afternoon and evening hours, we're going to be watching the stage be set once again across southeastern Manitoba down into the northern plains of the U.S. with a much weaker cap forecast today. So while we will be dry, we'll be quiet for much of the day, allowing that instability to percolate and build across the region. As we head into the late evening hours, right around 4, 5, 6 o'clock, watch for those thunderstorms to explode there across portions of North Dakota and then into south central Manitoba, and this includes the Winnipeg area. And initially, some of these storms could be supercells that produce some very large hail, maybe a tornado or two, but then we do expect those as we head into the later evening hours and the early overnight to grow upscale into more of a linear cluster, which would be more favorable for wind damage and a continued threat for maybe some isolated hail in there, the tornado threat likely diminishing into the overnight hours. Now, as we head through the next couple of days, this area of low pressure is going to take a while to kind of spin down across the region as it brings in much cooler temperatures. So here are those thunderstorms flaring up during the late afternoon hours. We've got that kind of cool rain continuing on the backside across much of the prairie. And as we head into the day tomorrow, this is Thursday morning now, getting into midday on Thursday, Thursday evening, getting into Thursday night. Friday now, we're still seeing kind of this cool rain holding on across portions of eastern Saskatchewan into central Manitoba, maybe even southern Manitoba at times, seeing some of that rain shower activity. Light in nature, but accompanied by cool temperatures, is really going to be an unpleasant end to the week, especially across the eastern prairie. Total precipitation between now and Saturday evening, again, going to be heaviest along and north of the warm front here from central Saskatchewan into central Manitoba, where we see more of that prolonged rain on the backside of the storm system over the next 24 to 48 hours. Again, maybe 40 to 60 millimeters locally higher in some areas. We could see those high amounts here in corridors where we get the heavier thunderstorms across southeastern Manitoba, but on the backside here where we see that cool rain, it's going to be lighter in nature, less than 10 millimeters in this area, and then same thing across southeastern Saskatchewan and southwestern Manitoba as well. That is going to bring in those cooler temperatures, again already in the mid-20s to near 30 degrees across southern Manitoba today, with teens elsewhere across the prairie. Let's watch temperatures here as we head into the overnight. We're going to see that cold front coming through. This will be tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon. Look at that, temperatures in the single digits across the southern border of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then as we talk about, Winnipeg, where you're headed for a high in the 30s today, Friday you will be spending the day in the lower teens as this really miserable air mass kind of sits over the area. Again, cloud cover, chances for light showers, and temperatures in the single digits to the lower teens across much of eastern Saskatchewan into central and southern Manitoba. This is Saturday afternoon now. Look at this. It's still holding on as you get down toward the far southern border with the U.S., starting to warm back up. But off to the north, this suggests that we're still seeing a lot in the way of clouds, a lot in the way of maybe those light rain showers, that gloomy light precipitation. So as you head further north over the next several days, even into the weekend, it's going to be pretty miserable, kind of along and north of Highway 16 in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Warming up as you head back towards the west, temperatures climbing back into the 20s here across Alberta by the time we get to the weekend. But boy, is it going to be unpleasant across portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba as we end this week. The reason for that, again, this area of low pressure beginning to slowly make its way across the prairie from west to east, and then just kind of parking itself there as we head into the end of the week, and that's going to allow that cooler air mass to be anchored across the eastern prairie over the next several days. Now, as we head even further into next week, we kind of keep troughing across Ontario, across the Great Lakes. We're going to end up with a period of northwest flow here across the prairie into the northern plains of the U.S., down into the Midwest, and that's going to keep us near average as far as our temperatures go as we head into next week. Not really looking at anything terribly unusual as far as temperatures go as we head into next week. Getting on the other side of this cool stretch here to end the week across Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Again, warming up in the west as we get into the weekend. And that warmth does continue to spread as we get into early next week, Monday and Tuesday now. You're seeing some blues in there, but really we're talking about maybe a degree to 3 degrees cooler than average here at times across the prairie in late June. So we're really not talking about much in the way of a cool down. We're just going to keep with northwest flow across the region. We won't build a lot of heat into the region, but we're going to see the coolest air begin to fade as well as we head into next week. This is also going to be accompanied by a bit of a dry stretch, drier than average, I should say, not totally dry, after we get this area of low pressure out of here. Again, cool and gloomy, dreary at times conditions holding on for the end of the week into the weekend across the eastern prairie as this upper level low just continues to sit across the region all the way into, late Saturday into Sunday before it finally starts to pull away. But keeping precipitation generally light in nature across the prairie, lighter than average as we head into next week, not looking at any kind of real heavy rainfall threat across the prairie. As we kind of just eliminate the next couple of days, if I were to show you the next 7 days precipitation anomaly, you'd see that bullseye across this region north of the area of low pressure. You'd see, some suggestions for scattered wetness here where we see those thunderstorms over the next 24 hours across southeastern Manitoba. But eliminating this storm system here and looking at the days 3 through 10 precipitation anomaly, again, drier than average across the prairie here as we get onto the backside of the system, with temperatures kind of settling to about where they should be this time of year. So Calgary, a look at your next 10 days, again, climbing back into the low 20s, right about where we should be this time of year for those highs. Similar look here in Edmonton, very similar as we look at Regina. Again, a big cool down on the backside there, a high of 11 tomorrow, climbing back into the lower 20s to finish the weekend. Saskatoon, again, a high of 14 degrees today and tomorrow, climbing back into the lower 20s as we get into the weekend. And then Winnipeg, a high of 32 today, dropping back down to a high around 20, 21 degrees as we head through the end of the week into the weekend and next week. So again, right about where we should be this time of year. Have a great day, a wonderful next couple of days. We'll talk to you again on Friday morning.